So we are going to talk about how to manifest anything in 2026 and make it the best year you had in your entire life, right? We'll also talk about how you can make sure that you follow up on your resolutions, because 80 to 90% of people fail to follow up on the resolutions after the first month, right? So let's just get right into it. So first, let's talk about resolutions, right? So your resolutions fail because first of all, you operate from the wrong plane of existence, and secondly, you lack self-trust, right? So for example, let's say at the start of this year, at the start of 2025, you would have had several resolutions that you wanted to follow through and be consistent with, right? But if you are the part of 90% of people, then you might have failed through, right? You might have not followed up on your resolutions. You might not even remember what resolutions you had, like at the start of this year. So at the start of 2025, if you had several resolutions and if you didn't follow through, then now you lack the self trust. You don't trust yourself, right? You don't trust your word. You don't keep your word as law. So again, if you keep, like for example, let's say, so for again, let's say in 2026 you have like 5 resolutions that you want to follow through. So let's assume you don't follow through on the third resolution. Then even though you follow all other resolutions perfectly, since you already lack self-trust, since you already lack the confidence to trust yourself, if you don't follow through in one resolution, your self-trust gets a hit, and because of that, you feel emotions like shame and guilt, and because of those emotions, you sabotage yourself, and all these 5 resolutions, you quit those resolutions, you don't follow through on them, right? So if you are someone who follows through always, if you are someone who follow through all the resolutions that you made at the start of 2025, then this point, it is not relevant to you. But if you are someone who lacks self-trust, who didn't follow through, who is not consistent, then it is very much important that you don't keep many resolutions, but I would recommend you just keep one resolution that I want you to follow through, that you know from the bottom of your heart that you will follow through, right? For example, if you're obese, if you're overweight, then losing weight will be your number one priority, because losing weight will significantly impact all other areas of life as well. For example, if you're broke, if you don't have any money, then your first focus, your first priority must be making money, and that must be your first resolution, right? So think about a desire where attaining that one desire, manifesting that one desire, will result in enormous amount of benefits in your life. And take that one desire and make it your one resolution. And once you follow through on the resolution, for example, let's say you want to make $2,000 a month because you're completely broke, right? Once you achieve those $2,000 a month, once you achieve that milestone, then your self-trust is so full that you can now incorporate many other solutions that you want to follow through, right? But since you haven't followed through on even one goal throughout this year, throughout 2025, then there's no point in making more goals. So take one goal, take one habit, take one desire that you want to manifest, that you want to achieve, or you want to follow through, and just focus on it, right? And the more you focus on it, the more you become consistent in that one resolution, the more your self-trust builds, right? So that's how you build self-trust. But if you're already someone who always follows through, who's always consistent, who's always disciplined enough to follow through on what they said that they will follow through, then that's not a problem, and you can completely negate this point. But majority of you who wants to form new resolutions for 2026, you want to watch this video till the end. So first of all, don't have too many resolutions, have just one, and make sure you follow through on it. So now that we have covered point 2, let's talk about point 1, which is the crux of this video, right? So the main reason people don't follow through on the resolution is because they operate on the wrong plane of existence. So as I've talked about in the previous videos, there are 3 planes of existence, right? There is a spiritual plane, there's the mental plane, and there's the physical plane. And 90% of people, or even 99% of people, only operate from the physical plane, right? Now this plane is a plane of action, it's an illusion, and it's also a reflection, right? Your mental plane is the cause of the physical plane, and we don't need to talk about the spiritual plane because that is out of scope of this video. But I have made in-depth videos on how to master each of these planes. I have covered how to master the physical plane, the mental plane, and spiritual plane into three separate videos, and I will link them down below if you want to learn more about each plane, right? But for a successful manifestation to happen, you need to be aligned in all three planes of existence, right? And the most important part is the mental plane, because your mental plane is the cause of your physical plane, right? So let's take an example. So this is the cause, which is the mental plane, and this is the effect, right? And your physical plane is an illusion. Let's talk about why is it an illusion. So your physical plane is an illusion because you can only see 0.003% of actual physical reality. Your eyes can only conceive less than 1% of actual reality, right? So 99.9% of reality is still invisible to you, right? Let me give you another example. We think that this is a world of matter, we think this is a world of physics, we think that the entire world is physical, right? So let's for example, this marker, you think it's a solid object, but if I take a powerful microscope and I zoom in to this marker, what I can see is subatomic particles vibrating, right? So your entire physical reality is vibrating all the time, but you can't see it, you can't sense it, because physical reality is an illusion. So that is why it is an illusion, and your physical reality is a reflection, right? So let's take an example. So let's take, so let's assume that you have a resolution that you want to lose weight, you want to become fit in 2026, but mentally you think you're unfit, you're obese, right? And then guess what will happen in the effect? Now, since mental plane is the cause, the effect will also be you continue being obese, you continue being overweight, right? So what I'm trying to tell you here is, first you need to enter your desired reality mentally, right? If you want to lose weight, you need first lose weight in your mind. How would you feel if you already lost 10 kilos, 20 kilos of fat? How would you feel if you had your dream body? And I want you to enter that state mentally first, because your mental plane is the cause for all your circumstances, all your situations in life, right? Let's take another example. Let's say you want to make more money, but if you're broke in your mind, then that will be the effect as well, right? How much ever action you can take, if you are not in the right frequency, then that action will be in vain. That action will not lead you to your desired reality, because your frequency is the cause, right? Your frequency can be called as your energetic signature, or your state of consciousness, or your mindset. It has many names and all equate to one thing. Whatever you want to call it is the true cause of your actual physical reality, right? So first you need to work on the cause rather than the effect, right? Most people work on the effect, and if you try to change an effect with an effect, it doesn't work. You have to change the cause, right? So let's talk about this. And only when you align with the right frequency, you can take the right action. Even if you think that you are taking the right action, if you are in the wrong frequency, then it doesn't matter, right? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this in detail so that you can have the best year of your life. So here's your frequency, right? And being in the right frequency means you need to have your desire mentally, right? You own your desire. You need to be in the state where you already possess your desire, right? I hope you understand this. So once you have your desire mentally, then you will have your intuition, right? So your intuition is the thing that compels you to do certain things. So because of your intuition, you will be compelled to do certain actions. And then you take action, and by taking action, you get your desired reality, right? So by aligning a frequency to your desires, you work in the mental plane. And because you have correctly aligned in the mental plane, you get the right intuition, and by you getting the right intuition, you're getting compelled to do certain actions, and those are the right actions, right? And if you take those right actions, you get your desired reality. And by you taking action, you align yourself in the sorry, forget it. So by taking action, you align yourself in the physical plane, right? And in this whole process, right? So in this whole process, you let go, you have faith that God has already given you what you want, right? So if you truly have faith that God has already given you what you want, then you don't, there's no need for you to be needy, for you to be desperate. Because why would you be desperate if you already have your desire, right? So that is you aligning in the spiritual plane as well. Now, once you are in the right frequency, you aligned yourself in the mental plane. Once you take right action, you already aligned yourself in the physical plane. And once you let go, once you're not being needy, once you're not being desperate, and you trust God, once you have faith in God that He has already given you what you desire, and it is just taking a little bit of a amount of time for it to get materialized into physical reality. So, how much ever faith you have, that will quicken the manifestation process. So, once you let go, once you have faith, you are aligning yourself in the spiritual plane. And once you're aligned in all three planes of existence, once you align in all three planes of existence, you get a successful manifestation. Right? So, your frequency is the true cause, and this is how the chain of events unfold. This is how any manifestation occurs. There are people, I know there are people who say that you don't need to take any action, you don't need to follow your intuition. Forget them, avoid them, because they are plain wrong. They are wrong because you are still a physical being, you are still going to take physical action, right? I mean, you can but don't get me wrong, you can still manifest by doing nothing, but that requires a state of consciousness that you still have a long way to go, right? You are not at the state of consciousness where you can manifest things by just pure thought. Because if you can do that, then you wouldn't be watching this video. You wouldn't be watching any video. You wouldn't be reading any books. You would not need any teachers, any um, gurus, any teacher. You would not need any coach. You would not need anything, right? You would be in such a state where none of the physical desires that you want right now, it will not appeal you. None of the physical desires will be appealing to you, right? So if you still want these worldly desires, if you're still being human, then of course you're going to follow this, because you can't manifest by pure thought. But let me stop deviating from the topic. So this is how you manifest, this is how any successful manifestation happens, right? You need to be aligned in all three planes of existence, but the mistake people make is they only operate from the physical plane, right? When you only operate from the physical plane and only take action, first of all, you don't know whether this is right action or not, right? And second of all, even if you think it is right action, it is not the right action, because only when you're in the right frequency, you will get to know what is the right action. So how much ever you work hard, how much ever you put in 8-hour work days, 12-hour work days, 16-hour work days, is not going to work, because you are not aligned with the right frequency. So how do you align yourself with the right frequency? You do that by you already having a desire mentally. You go into an imagination scene and you imagine like you already have your desire. And by you imagining a scene where you already have your desire, emotions pop up. And it will pop up naturally. You don't need to force emotions out. It will pop up naturally. And you just live in your imagination and let that state come forward, and you maintain that state, you sustain that state throughout the day. And you just be aware that you already have your desire. Check out the video I made where I discuss the technique that I use to manifest my desires, because that works both on imagination and on awareness, right? That's a very powerful video. Make sure to check it out. But For the topic of this video, all you have to do is enter into an imaginative scene where you already have a desire, and that in itself will bring forward a state, an emotion, and you need to carry that emotion, carry that state throughout the day, and that's all manifestation is. Let me talk a little bit more about frequency because it's such an important topic, right? So these tips or the advice that I'm going to give now will change the game, which is, how do you know that you are in the right frequency, right? So let's talk about that. So how do you know that you are in the right frequency? If you are in the right frequency, you will not wait for a manifestation to occur, right? You will not feel needy, desperate. You will have a desire in the now. So, speaking about time, time is an illusion, right? The past does not exist, the future does not exist. What exists is the present moment, right? You only have power in the present moment. So, you need to have your desire in the present moment for it to get materialized into physical reality. The more you have your desire in the present moment, the more faster it will get manifested into physical reality. But I see many people waiting for the manifestations to occur. Now, if you're waiting for manifestations to occur, then that means you're not in the right frequency, right? What does it mean, like, if you're not in the right frequency? What it means is you do not have your desire mentally, you do not have your desire vibrationally, right? Because whatever desire you have, you only have the desire because you want to feel like how you would feel if you already had that desire, right? Like, you don't actually want that house, you don't actually want that car, you don't actually want that money. You just want to, you just want that feeling after you own that money, after you own that car, after you own that house. So we are all striving, we are all desiring for just states, not the physical object, right? For example, money represents freedom, money represents security, money represents joy for some people, right? Now, if you want money, you don't actually want the money, you just want the freedom that money provides for you. You just want the security that money provides for you. You just want the joy that money provides for you, right? So you don't actually want money, you just want the states that accompany money, right? So if you can achieve that state internally first, then you won't need money, and that precisely is the reason you will manifest more money in your life, right? So if you can cultivate that state that accompanies your desire, then that state in itself will materialize that particular desire into physical reality, right? So if you wait for the manifestations to occur, if you're being needy, if you're being desperate, then that means you don't have that state first, you don't have that state internally. If you don't have that state internally, if you don't cultivate that state internally, then of course it's not going to get manifested into physical reality, because the biggest contributor of your frequency is emotion, it is state, it is your feelings. So once you have your desire mentally, you will inevitably be in a state where you already have your desire. And only if you do it properly, you won't feel the need to be needy or be desperate, or you won't wait for manifestations to occur, because you're already so fulfilled within. If you're already so fulfilled within, why the hell you will still wait? Why the hell you will still be needy or desperate? You won't be, right? So that is a trap that many people fall into. They say that I'm doing affirmations, I'm doing visualizations, I'm doing scripting, I'm doing sax, I'm doing the lullaby method. Like, there are so many techniques that people do, right? And when they come to me and ask, like, I'm doing so many techniques, like, I'm doing it consistently, but still I can't see physical changes in my physical reality. And that question in itself says to me that you are properly not in the state, you're not in the wish fulfilled, you're not living in the end, you're not in the right frequency. Because if you were in the right frequency, you not even think that manifestation is not coming, that manifestation is not happening. You still being emotionally dependent on seeing external reality change is precisely reason you can't manifest. right? Once you're emotionally independent and once you have the state that you wish for, that you crave for, then of course you're not going to need that physical manifestation to occur. And that form of non neediness, that form of non desperateness, that form of security, that form of feeling secure is the precisely sense you will manifest what you want into physical reality. I hope I got my point across, right? So, so enter into an imaginative scene, play with your imagination, live with your imagination, and create a state internally where you already have your desire, right? Ask yourself, how would I feel if I already have my desire? If you want more money, ask yourself, how would I feel if I had more money, right? And if I have more money, and take that feeling and cultivate it so that you feel that emotion throughout the day. And even if you can't feel that emotion, you just be aware that you already have your desire mentally, right? For example, let's say you want a car and you just bought a car. For the first week, you might feel excited, you might feel joy that you already own a car, but after 2 months or even 4 months, 6 months, you wouldn't feel excited or joyful that you own a car. It is just a normal part of you. It is just a normal part of your lifestyle, right? So you are aware that you own a car, but you're not necessarily like being ecstatic, being excited about that car because you have been owning it for like half a year, and it has become so normalized to you, right? And that is the target that we are setting in our manifestation practice. So once you go into your imagination, at first you might feel joy, at first you might feel ecstatic, at first you might feel excited, at first you might feel secure, but as more time passes, you just feel calm, you just feel relaxed, and you wouldn't get any like excitement or joy because it has become so normalized in your vibration. And once you normalize your desires, once your desire feels like a part of you, then that is precisely when your manifestations will occur, right? I have made several videos on this particular topic. Make sure to check them out. I will leave them down in the description. But that is the end of this video. And if you're more serious about making 2026 the best year of your life, then check out the link in the description where you will be able to talk to me, work with me, and get specific advice and protocols to your own situation, right? So how much ever generic videos you watch, sometimes you might need that extra push, that extra specific protocols that is tailored, that is customized to your own situation so that you can manifest more faster and easier, right? So check it out if you want, and yeah, I will see you next year.